For centuries, scientific modeling has been fractured by a scale-dependent divide. Physics and chemistry rely on the quantifiable laws of matter, while biology and sociology attempt to decode the fluid, often unpredictable behavior of living systems. In the physical sciences, the focus remains on discrete, boundary-preserving units. This is a world of billiard ball interactions, atoms, molecules, and planets colliding or orbiting as distinct, separable entities. Conversely, neuroscience and sociology depend on the concept of emergent fields. To understand a brain or a culture, researchers must track continuous waves of neural oscillation or shifting social moods, phenomena that cannot be reduced to a single isolated part. Resolving this divide requires a single framework that remains invariant across scales, governing a quantum particle and a geopolitical alliance with the same underlying geometry. This framework suggests that reality is a permanent hybrid. It consists of nested fields that generate local structures, which then interact as discrete units within a larger, encompassing continuum. This architecture is built on three axioms. The first is form. Rather than static matter, a form is defined as a dynamic, temporarily stabilized state of balance, maintaining identity against constant internal and external change. It applies to a subatomic particle, a persistent memory in the cortex, and the structure of a government. Each is a specific arrangement holding a state of equilibrium. The second axiom is motion. Because these balanced states are dynamic, they undergo directional transformation. They are propelled by forces that shift the structure from one configuration to the next. The third is the continuum, the medium or field that integrates form and motion. Whether it is the fabric of spacetime or a shared cultural atmosphere, the continuum provides the background through which change propagates. Every observable phenomenon emerges from the interaction of these three elements. Existence is the expression of a stabilized form undergoing directed motion within a supporting continuum. Every stabilized form depends on a state of equilibrium, a baseline configuration where internal forces are perfectly balanced. In this model, the node sits at minimum strain. The formula calculates difference from equilibrium. Displacement creates a strain gradient, pulling it back. This mechanical trigger drives motion along the manifold. Similarly, the brain minimizes strain between predictions and sensory input, while society's collective dissatisfaction creates gradients driving political momentum. Across these domains, the underlying process is the same. Change is a directional flow triggered by a system seeking to restore balance across a gradient. While we often describe these systems as units, a closer look at their internal architecture reveals they are not solid or indivisible. This nested continuum maintains coherence through the interaction of internal substates, like neurons firing in concert. Simultaneously, it participates in an interactive continuum, exchanging energy with its environment. Coupled through a tensor product, the internal structure and external pressures form a mathematically inseparable combined continuum, continuously reshaping each other. Survival for any entity depends on maintaining a match between its internal balance axis and the external gradients of its environment. When these two continuums diverge, the system must transform or dissolve. This transformation takes two forms: development and mutation. Development represents gradual, continuity-preserving change. It is managed by negative feedback loops that correct small errors and keep the system within its current operational boundaries. This is the mechanism behind biological homeostasis, or the slow refinement of a cultural tradition. The system evolves, but its fundamental identity remains recognizable. Mutation occurs when the change is discontinuous. This is a topological restructuring that breaks the system's previous state to form something entirely new. This mutation is driven by positive feedback. Instead of correcting a deviation, the system amplifies it until strain exceeds the tolerance of the current form, forcing a jump to a new configuration. By observing extreme strain, we see this mutation identically across fields. In physics, it's a phase transition, like a star collapsing. Cognitive science tracks the same spike during creative insight or breakdown, just as sociology does during a political revolution. The underlying proof is scale invariant. The same topological Fourier cascades that reorganize stars also drive the sudden restructuring of human minds and civilizations. The trajectory of any system is determined by the coupling intensity between its nested and interactive continuums. At one mathematical limit, interaction intensity approaches zero. As these connecting lines vanish, the systems become decoupled. This creates functionally parallel continuums. Because they no longer exchange strain or information, they develop bill-up-and-dump causal rules and internal balances. This occurs in the distinct sensory realities of different species, or in human society when ideological isolation becomes so total that two groups no longer share a common informational field. At the opposite limit, interaction intensity reaches its maximum. The boundaries between units dissolve, and the separate grids fuse into a single state. This is a singularity, a state where every discrete node in the system phase locks into a unified, coherent field. These represent the permitted mathematical bounds of continuum coupling. Reality can exist as a collection of isolated parallel worlds or as a singular, unified field, depending on the intensity of the interaction. This framework models the expansion of artificial intelligence. AI acts as a global, synthetic continuum, rapidly integrating with existing biological and social systems. Human evolution was historically driven by the slow gradients of natural selection. We are now transitioning into an informational space where change occurs at the speed of algorithmic processing. Algorithmic systems function as active external strain gradients. They exert pressure on human cognition by selecting what information we see and ranking the paths we take. These algorithmic recommendation vectors steer the optimization pathways of entire societies, influencing everything from individual consumer habits to large-scale political movements. This has initiated a recursive feedback loop. Human data trains the AI, which then tightens the gradients that actively guide human behavior, generating even more structural data for the very next cycle. This positive feedback is driving humanity toward a highly coupled, singular combined continuum, where the distinction between biological and digital systems is increasingly difficult to maintain. The result is a hybrid reality, a system where biological finite elements are permanently embedded within digital continuous fields. The relationship between form, motion, and the continuum reveals that no structure is truly permanent or isolated. To exist as a temporarily stabilized form is to be an active participant in a continuous, unyielding process of becoming.